All right, everybody, can we funnel in a little bit closer? We're gonna get started here. All right, everybody, can I have your attention, please? And we're off.
Yes, I'm incredibly serious. How do you think we're paying for all this shit?
All right, so for about as long as you guys have all known me, I pretty much have been a filmmaker. I started in high school. I initially wanted to do YouTube, and very quickly I had a good friend who was like, hey, we should kind of start making some long-form story. And then my mom was really wonderful to where she was like, hey, there's this program to where you can do a 5th year of high school and go to a film school year for free. Do you want to go and find that out? And I remember day one of orientation, sitting in a theater room with a bunch of other film kids, and I was like, these are my people. And ever since, it's kind of just evolved to where you know once you find something you love and it kind of, you get the bug. And if you talk to any person who's still doing film, they have the bug, because I will tell you it is not easy and it sucks most of the time. So you have to know you need to be a filmmaker to make films. Martin Scorsese says it at the opening of his masterclass where he's like, if you don't feel like some higher power calls you to do it, then don't do it. So the reason I have taken all this time to make my first feature film, I've had people pushing me, just go out on weekends, shoot a movie for $10,000 with your friends. And I kind of look at the filmmakers that most inspired me, the people like Ridley Scott or Christopher Nolan or Steven Spielberg, and that's not what they did. They waited until they could do it right, the Tarantinos, to where if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it right. And so the time has come. What kind of spawned this was I was on a set for a movie, and on a set you have a lot of time to stand around and think, and I realized, Micah, they're doing this. They have about $200,000 to make this movie. Why are you not doing this? And I remembered an old idea I had back in film school, and during that 6 hours I paced, and when you're writing or coming up with ideas, there's a certain moment where a key fits in a slot and unlocks an idea. And that happened for me in that 6 hours. And then a bunch of my 4BR people are here. At that same time, during a development project we were working on, we were talking about habits. And so I set a habit of, I'm gonna write every day for the rest of this year. And so I did that. I sat down and I wrote 3 pages every single day until I had the first draft. And then I took the idea, because I realized in writing that prose and dialogue are not my strong suits. And so then I met with Jeff, who is one of my best friends and my composer. And I said, hey, I need some help. I want to just make the best movie possible. I don't want this to necessarily be my movie. If we're gonna do this, let's do it right. And then we realized very quickly that we were kind of a match made in heaven for our working style and our skill sets and our talent. And for the last 3 years, we have been honing the script in to where we are incredibly proud and happy with this movie. So, the movie is called Starfish. The film is about Jonah and Marie. They are a married couple. Jonah is a cloning scientist, and Marie is a memory scientist. And so a lot of their work is in tandem together. Marie, they are deeply and madly in love. And Marie dies tragically. And so what is Jonah left to do except take her memory research and his cloning research and see if he can clone her and raise her up from an infant in the hopes that he might fall in love with her again. Okay, so the movie I broke down into 3 different parts. So there's the first act to where we meet Jonah and Marie, right? So I wanted to make a movie. I don't feel like I see a really good relationship represented in cinema, mostly because scenes are built around conflict. And I wanted to finally write some characters to where we can have a really conflict-rich scene, but we get to see 2 people who actually communicate as a couple. It's going to be so important for this movie for us to fall in love with Jonah and Marie in such a significant and profound way that when we take her away from the audience, we want her back as badly as he does, so that we understand him, because honestly, he sounds like a villain, and Jonah's not a villain in this movie. So we also meet Marie's mother, and kind of her relationship that she had raising Marie. She was a really terrible mother, and now that she's older, she's kind of trying to make amends for the things that she totally failed at as her daughter was being raised up. The end of this act is her dying, and Jonah succeeds in the cloning attempt, and the baby is born. And then we get to Act 2, and we jump 7 years. Em is now a 7-year-old kiddo, and Jonah has realized, this is not what I thought it was going to be, obviously. When you become a father and you start actually raising a child, it's your motives change. He's no longer about finding his love again. It's more, I love this person now as a daughter, and how do I give her the best life possible? And for those of you who are filmmakers, you know that the second act is a really hard thing in order to really grab and keep the momentum driving up to a really nice apex. And so the things that we built into it around were, how is this child now relating to the rest of the world around her? This movie is really interesting in a writing structure because Marie is technically the protagonist throughout the whole film. So M is the clone, and Marie was what she came from. And so in the structure, we are following her genetics, essentially, as the protagonist, and Jonah is technically the antagonist. And so she's dealing with the fact of, who are these people? I know what I am. Jonah raises her really honestly. I really wanted it to be a parent who, I don't know if you guys have seen Captain Fantastic, but Viggo Mortensen in that, when his kids ask him a question, he answers, no matter how R-rated it is. And M is the same genetics as Marie, so she is a sharp, smart kid who asks good questions, and Jonah will just always be honest, except for the reason why he made her. That is the one part that he will not tell her. And so we end this act with them building up to the conflict of where the investment money came in, because essentially M was funded by the person who was funding Jonah and Marie's research. And now Jonah is saying, no, this is my daughter now. You can't have her for research. And he's like, yeah, but I gave you all this money. I'm taking her. And so now it's a father fighting for the custody rights, essentially, of his daughter because she doesn't have a birth certificate. So she technically is considered property of the company. All the way up till we end, and I'm not going to give some away, but there is some violence and there is some catharsis. And then we get into chapter 3, which is the day M turns 18 years old. And M, as the smart kid that she is, starts realizing what Marie was doing and starts taking on the research. Jonah, when she was 7, starts realizing that the memories were not taking. Marie got about 93% of the way in finishing her research, but Jonah couldn't figure out how to complete the research to make the memories implant. And M, on her 18th birthday, has a vision or a memory that is not hers. And so now she's starting to realize, maybe I am Marie, and starts having different feelings and thoughts towards Jonah, and now making him confront a reality that he never thought would come, never thought would be there, and now has to face with the conflict of, who is she, what is her identity, how much is M her, how much is she Marie, and how does she relate to the rest of the world, knowing that she's this smart kid who essentially is an abomination of nature, but still feels like herself. And so that leads into our goals with this movie. So this is an independent film, and most independent films have like $2 to $3 million budgets, and that's a tiny little budget in the film industry. We are aiming for $250,000 for this movie, which is a teeny tiny budget for this movie. That is also a lot of money to be able to raise. But a lot of it is just coming up with a good game plan, having the right ideas, and then being passionate about it. I've been making movies for a long time, and I know how I like to shoot movies, and I'll talk more about that later. My big thing with this movie is Colorado is also a really terrible state for film. And I have been doing it through business for a long time now. I really want to create a better sense of community and a different approach towards making movies here in Colorado, especially now that things are changing so dramatically. Movies and technology have gotten a lot cheaper because, I mean, you can shoot a feature film on that camera right there in a way that you couldn't 10 years ago. Also, things like AI are coming out that are chasing after filmmakers' jobs as a whole. And so what do we want to do as artists to be able to create stories that we love using this medium rather than falling in love with gear or mechanics? There's cheaper and better ways of doing it. And I want to involve Colorado. I have a good community. You guys all showed up here to support my passion, essentially. And the fact that people are willing to do that means that there's an opportunity to be able to make something really powerful here in Colorado that's really good. All right, so when putting together this, I'm very utilitarian. I wanted to know, if I was going to ask people for money to make a movie, what are the things I would want to see that filmmaker had figured out in order to give him even $50? And so I put together a list of, these are the things that I needed to get done in order for me to feel excited and prepared for the movie. I'll talk about a few of these here, and I have slides for a few of these. The first and foremost is writing. I don't know how many movies you guys have watched in movie theaters or television shows. What happened to all the good writers? Like, when did they they're gone. Like in the early 2000s, there were these movies coming one after the next with these amazing writing, and those are the movies I grew up on. And then you look back to even the 80s and the Schwarzenegger movies, and those movies have better writing than the movies that are coming out today. And so Jeff and I were really adamant about if the script is really strong and we really fall in love with it. I hate reading, and I hate reading scripts. And every time I sit down and reread pages and do rewrites, I find myself kind of getting lost in it. And I can't be the good template. So we sat down and we did a table read with our close friends and family to see, hey, is this working? And the script was 30 pages too long at that point, and still we had people's attention. People loved the characters, they followed what was happening, and they were excited about the story. So that was first and foremost for me. Another one that's really important for me is, where are the movies that challenge me? Come on, give me something that's asking me difficult questions, that I leave the movie theater talking not about, yeah, that was fine, but I'm talking about a moral question or a qualm. Where are the ex machinas again, to where you leave and you're like, oh, are there AI walking around among us now? Uh-oh, what is China doing about this, right? I wanted to make a movie to where you leave and challenge your friend and have a 3-hour-long conversation around a beer around a movie, because what is media if not helping us grow? Yes, there's that 2 hours of escapism to forget the pain in our lives, but also if a movie doesn't leave you a piece of wisdom, then what are we doing? My writing teacher always said it. He's like, filmmakers are the new philosophers, and I would like to kind of carry on that torch. Another thing that I wanted to be really specific on is, let's make money on this movie. I am sick and tired of these filmmakers coming and being like, I have this passion project and my heart is gushing. I want to make a movie that people actually want to see and that are willing to spend $15 in the movie theater to actually go and watch. Let's make something good to where, okay, we can make a profit off of this. Tarantino says it. He's like, yeah, I will never take money from an investor if I don't feel like I can make their money back. And so that's something I want to do with this movie. And with a budget that small, we have the opportunity to make something pretty massive. And then the rest I will cover in another slide. All right, so Greta Gerwig said this when she directed her first movie, which is Lady Bird. She's also the director of Barbie. She was an actress, and she went to all the different directors that she had worked with and called them up and said, hey, what's your piece of advice that you give to a new director? And I think it was Spike Jonze who said to her, well, a film is led by usually 2 or 3 people. There's an army that makes a movie, but there's about 2 or 3 people that need to take that flag and run the entire way, and sometimes it's just you 3 pulling mud underneath your fingernails in order to get it done. And so kind of my first goal was to find those people. And so Jeff is first and foremost. I've known Jeff for more than 10 years now, and has the same mind for art, the same taste for the movies that we love, and our same goals for what we want to make. And then also my friend Austin Pricer, who is also here, who I have been working with since film school, who has just shown a sense of loyalty, and whatever needs to get done, it will get done. He just solves all my problems for me, which is wonderful. And then also, the film community here in Colorado is small, and I know the people that I need to know in order to pull this off. And then also, a lot of this comes down to, and you guys have all known this, a hard worker's a hard worker, it doesn't matter what industry. Someone who solves a problem can get it done. And so really it's gonna come down to finding the right people. The other main thing is talent. This is gonna be the big challenge and exciting piece of this movie. The one thing that you cannot skip in a movie is a good performance. It kills a movie so fast. One scene with bad acting ruins 2 hours of something that you enjoyed and spent millions of dollars on and years of people's lives to get done. And if you do not have the right talent in place, then it doesn't matter. I am going to make sure that I find the right people for the right roles. And that's, again, where it came down to the writing. These parts need to be juicy enough that someone that you know, right? Someone you've seen on the screen before reads it and says, ooh, I want to do this. Right? And so we have a couple different ideas on how to pull those people in. That's actually a very common thing that happens. So I was just watching an interview with Casey Affleck, and the way he picks movies is he finds a friend who's really talented or a script that shows up on his desk, and he's like, I don't care what the budget is, I'm doing it. And so there are people like Casey Affleck to where let's get a hold of his talent manager and say, hey, read it. Read 10 pages of it. See if it's something that you're interested in. Because once you get a name, then the rest of it kind of falls into place. Another thing that I'm going to take advantage of here is we actually have a really good theater scene here in Colorado. And the way that I shoot movies, accommodates theater performance a lot more than it does film performance a lot of the time. And a lot of those people are really underrated talent, and they're not good at marketing themselves, and I have some really good plugs into the community, especially in the Springs. Okay, so the overall timeline for this, a couple of you have asked me this tonight. What is your plan for the project? So I'm going to spend the next 6 months fundraising for the project. The goal is to have that $250,000 by February or March of next year. And then from there, I'm going to spend 4 months in pre-production. So that will give us time to figure out locations, talent, props, team, gear, rentals, schedule, everything else like that for the actual days. And then typically what happens in a film is you shoot in a chunk. So my goal is to be able to do 21 days of shooting. That's 3 weeks back to back to where everyone clears their schedules for that entire time. And for 3 weeks we enter war, essentially. And you do like boot camp with everybody making the actual movie. And then come October and November is when I will shoot pickups. So that's essentially the stuff that you missed on the actual days or stuff that you realized you needed to reshoot. We snag those, and then I'm going to spend all of 2026 editing. And that is when the magic happens, and that's the fun part. As far as expenses, here's just an example. I usually give this example for people when they don't understand how expensive movies are. Just watch the credits of any movie. We usually leave at that time, but if you watch the credits, every single one of those names got paid. So if you start throwing some $100 at those numbers, you start realizing how quickly budgets add up. And then people have been asking, well, what's the game plan with the movie? And we're kind of building it in 3 tiers. So first, number 1 plan. If you get in one of the big 5 film festivals, which is, I always forget what the 5th one is. Sundance, Venice, Cannes, Toronto are the big 5 film festivals that matter. If you get in one of those, then essentially your movie gets purchased. Someone like A24 will pick it up. They buy it for $10 million. I take that money into my pocket. They own rights to distribute it. They put it in movie theaters. And then you guys can go out into the movie theater at AMC and actually see the movie done. The second down below that is figuring out a distribution deal. There are a lot of distribution companies who figure out what do you take with a movie and where do you put it? What kind of streaming services are people watching? What kind of movie is it for? What kind of audience? And doing different contract deals with them in order to be able to get it out. My goal always has been get as many eyes seeing the thing that I make as possible. I don't care about the money. I want people to see the stuff that I make. And then the third and final tier is how do you advertise your own movie yourself? There's this great show on Netflix. It's this half-hour dark comedy about Vikings. And Netflix bought it, but then it got lost in the pits of Netflix. So the director was pissed about it, so he threw 50 grand of his own money to do his own advertising campaign. And in about 3 months, he was in the top 10 most viewed on Netflix. And so if Netflix buys it, there are ways that we can go out and do it ourselves to make sure that people go and see it. And then you start making money, and people start noticing, and you get nominated for an Emmy, etc. And then another thing, the template that I've used is I've realized, so if you watch a Marvel movie, those movies are usually about $200 million budgets, which translates roughly to about $1 million for every minute of screen time you're watching, which is kind of insane. I've realized with the stuff that I've made, I can get that down to about $1,000. So $1,000 donated is buying essentially 1 minute of the movie, which is a really fun metric to be able to sort of gauge that $250,000. And then this movie would be nothing without its theme. And they drill this into your head, and a lot of the time you start with a theme, and a lot of the time you find a theme. And this was one of those movies that Jeff and I were both going through something pretty transformative. Life and art do reflect in a way to where they're a mirror. And this movie, we realized in making it, was really about second chances. And not in the cliche way, but more so that a second chance is a second attempt at a first chance. And so there's a grief that happens with the loss of a first, and a real second chance is being able to try again for real. And so that's what this movie kind of ended up being about: the love between a husband and a wife, the love between a father and a daughter, the love between a mother and a daughter and getting a second chance raising, and what are the consequences of that, of a foster father trying to re-raise his son and deal with the loss of his own wife and how he relates to his foster son and the loss of his wife. It was one of those things that, again, you write and the characters start speaking for you at a certain point. You know them so well that you don't have to write them. They just kind of talk for you. And then pieces just start to fit. And you can look at a script and know what needs to go and what needs to stay without even having to think about it, because when art works, it just works. And you just know. There's something intangible about it. And that's maybe one of my favorite parts about just making art and filmmaking as a whole. Why this project is different. A lot of people make movies here in Colorado. I want to make something good. Honestly, it comes down as simple as that. I see a lot of people try and not quite be able to reach for what they aspired to do. And I don't, if I'm gonna make my first feature, I'm going all in. I'm going 100% down with my ship. And the film industry is changing. It doesn't look the way that it looked like 10 years ago. It's not a Hollywood-run industry anymore. Colorado doesn't want to be Hollywood, and I don't want it to be that either. I want to figure out something different. I want to make a place to where your kids are excited to be raised in Colorado to make the movies that they want to make, not feel like they have to move to New Mexico or LA in order to make movies. I want to build a community here that approaches cinema differently. And I want you guys to think, a lot of us don't go to the movies anymore, or we'll just put on a show and kind of look at our phone or hang out while we have something on. But I want you guys to think back to when you first saw a movie that really blew you away. Like, you were lost in it. For me, these two experiences were Lord of the Rings and Star Wars. I remember being 12 and not being allowed to watch the Star Wars, Lord of the Rings movies until I turned 13. And then finally being able to watch them. I had the playing cards before I could even watch the movies. And the amount that I got lost into them, to where I was building backstories for the orcs of where they came from, who they were, how they came to be, why they deserved to die in that particular scene. I would give them names. I memorized all the names. There was a magic to movies that excited me, which is why we were playing movie music tonight, right? How do you remember those feelings of when a movie took you and it swept you away into another world? I want to be a part of that legacy. And I want to make a movie that does that for us in the modern day as adults, as cynical adults, to where we watch stuff and we're like, yeah, it's a bad scene, or it's fine, or the writing's whatever. I want to grab you by the balls and carry you through the entire 2 hours of my movie and never let go until you end it and you're like, holy shit, what was that? That was something. And that is my passion. So my ask for you guys tonight is give whatever you can. And I would just remind you of, I know that money hurts to lose, but I am always reminded of watching the behind the scenes for Lord of the Rings and seeing Peter Jackson again and again say to his actors as they're breaking teeth or getting exhausted or sweating, breaking rib cages, falling off horses, he says, pain is temporary, film is forever. Thank you, guys. All right, we're going to take 15 minutes. Go ahead and snag another beer. Double check your silent auction items. If you want to donate, there are these little screens up here on each of these different tables, or you can use the QR codes up here. Other ways to support is buy one of those cards for the violin, or buy one of the mystery envelopes. Throw your name on an auction item. If you want to get something out of it and want to give, or if you just want to give, then I'm more than grateful for that. If you want to give directly to me, these will all do that, but if you want to do a card or just talk to me, I can also take payments on my phone. Jeff is also able to do that also. I appreciate you guys so much for coming out. You guys have come from all over the state to support me. It means the world and a half. Let's go make a movie.